Hi, and welcome to Annoyed Kitten channel, where I do exactly the content I feel like. Usually it's about Scandinavian folklore and Scandinavian tradition, mixed up with a whole bunch of SCAE, which is Society for Creative Anachronism, and all my opinions here are not their opinions, that's just my opinions. And it's time to get up on my soapbox again, because I have been thinking. What is the topic? Well, it's actually two things. One, we have a responsibility when we create things for the internet. When we make content for YouTube, TikTok, blogs, etc., we have a responsibility to make sure that not wrong stuff are spread. The second thing, talking about cultures and groups you are not a part of, and why this might be such a dangerous swamp to thread and possibly a form of colonization. So why was I thinking about this now? Well, again, YouTube have recommended me videos about Scandinavian folklore, Scandinavian history, and a lot of Viking mythology and Viking history. And so much is wrong. And this is clearly made by people that has never set foot in any Scandinavian country. They probably never even been to Europe, and they have never talked to a person actually living in a Scandinavian country. When I come with facts and comments on their videos, I am called a liar and that my people have erased their people and all signs of their culture. What is my people? My people is usually Christianity and scholars at university, and their people are usually meant to be neo-pagans, witches, all kinds of non-Christian societies. Societies that probably have never asked to be associated with the person claiming them as their people. So am I a Christian? No, I am not a Christian. If I have to choose some kind of religion, I'm more of an agnostic. There might be stuff out there, I don't know. As long as I don't mess with it, it will not mess with me. Mixed in with a whole bunch of let's believe science. I don't label myself particularly carefully. I'm just very much not a Christian. I am a scholar though. I have studied literature, history, and ethnology at the university. And what do they mean when they say their people? When they say their people, they usually point towards some kind of pre-Christian group and claims that Christianity have erased that culture. And when they call it their people, they are doing something fundamentally wrong, according to me. Because a lot of things they put under their people are so not their people. They happily have stolen things from all over the place, and they have very little or possibly no connection to it. And that is not cultural appreciation, that is cultural appropriation, according to me. Especially since these people that do this seems to be so completely fact resistant and have a very hard time seeing the difference between historical facts and their own belief system. I do not judge you, whatever you choose to believe in. If you believe that your vagina will be cleansed by squatting over steaming vegetables, well, I might think you're a little bit crazy, but hey, whatever rocks your boat. As long as you're not doing anything to harm yourself or others, go ahead. Squat over that steam. Do whatever you want. But if you start telling people that people actually did this during the Viking Age as a fact, then I want to see some evidence. And that evidence, it can't just be, I believe they did. Belief and history, two very different things. Romanticizing the past is never a good thing. And even though it has been done for hundreds of years, it doesn't make it right. And this is bugging me so much. and this is why I am holding this rant. If I, as a white person, I mean, come on, I'm so white that if I step outside, people will start screaming, the beacons are lit and God will call for aid. If my lily white ass person get this annoyed when they do this to my culture, which is usually the Vikings and Scandinavian people, what would people think if they come from an oppressed culture, a culture that have been oppressed in the past, that possibly is still oppressed? I will not put myself as a voice for them. That would be just as wrong, especially since I don't belong in their culture. But there are things I, as a person that actually have studied ethnology, which is the study field of cultures, there are things that I dare to say. And that is, if you, as a person not living in the culture you are talking about, without talking to people that actually do, talking about stuff like you know this stuff and use the word when I researched it, that's where things probably will go wrong. Why? Because cultures are layered. Cultures are knotty and not easy to understand. It's like an onion. You peel one layer and you find another layer under it. And if you didn't actually do your research properly, like talking to people that are in touch with this culture, you might miss and you might misunderstand a whole lot of important details. Take, for example, the question about the Swedish folklore and the racism against the Sami that I mentioned both in my video about trolls and especially in my video about werewolves. If you don't know our history and our culture, there's a huge risk that you will happily read Swedish folklore without reflecting on that racism because you don't know about it. And this is not something that we have started to talk about until very recent years. So you will not find it very much online or in books either. So you will go on YouTube and your podcast or whatever and use words like lapp without knowing that what you are using is a slur, a rather racist slur on top of that. Many Sami do not want us to use that word anymore. So hence the question, can I speak about a culture that I'm not from or not living in close connection with? Is this a cultural appropriation? I say it's at least a very treacherous swamp to walk into. Be careful. First of all, I don't think that you can do cultural appropriation on culture that hasn't actually been suppressed. Neither Vikings nor the Scandinavians have really been oppressed. Well, there was this very short time during the 19th century that Swedes actually were considered a plague by the Irish people, but I don't think that really counts. We are white privileged people. The Sami are not though, and still aren't, and they are still a part of Scandinavia. So thinking around this problem, I thought it might be a very good example of why speaking about a culture that isn't yours is such a deep, treacherous swamp, and that doing so might cause irritation and anger by the people that actually are a part of that culture. Here is where you, as a creator on social media and internet, has such a huge responsibility. You think you are doing cultural appreciation, but the problem is because you are not from that culture, have not talked to that culture, and didn't do your homework, you might be making shit up. You are not talking about an actual culture. You are not checking your resources. You are just talking about this romanticized version of that culture. And by the way, that is another thing that I really wish we could stop doing, and that is romanticizing the past and some cultures. But let's leave that for now and stay on the topic that you might be making shit up because you didn't check with someone that actually lives in that culture. And even worse, you are spreading it to people that think that you know what you are talking about because you used those words when I researched this. But you didn't. You just read a wiki page or an article on some place on the internet, and you didn't question who was writing it and to what purpose. You need to be critical of your sources and question the content. And it is very important when you do actual research to do this. So getting historical facts wrong, well, it's not good, mind you, but sure, it's understandable. We don't have many historical sources for at least the very older cultures. So it is open to some interpretation. Some. But when you start to drag in Scandinavia they still do this, which we probably don't, paint us all as some sort of modern Vikings, and put in Freya and Thor in places they for sure do not belong, and also claim that a symbol from the 16th century that's probably have a Jewish origin is Viking. Well, this is where I say that this is a form of colonization. You are doing exactly what the less careful researchers did during the 18th and 19th centuries. You gather information that you don't have the tools to analyze. I do not make videos about Kenyan or Chinese folklore. Why? Because I don't know enough about the culture to actually dare to draw conclusions about it. The risk that I would get things wrong is super high, and the risk that people will look at my video and then think that what I am saying is correct and then spread it even further is also very high. And this is the responsibility I have as a video maker on YouTube. And I see this happening in very many fields, including, as a very clear example, the costuming and the costuming history, especially for women. We are living in an information world today where things spread very fast. What I say here can reach 1,000 people in one click, and they can share it even further. So we have a responsibility when we make videos and articles about historical things and spread it online. We have an even greater responsibility when we do this about a culture that isn't ours from the beginning. When people are speaking about faith and religion and speaking about, I believe in this, for me, the tree out in my yard represents Yggdrasil. That is one thing, and something that I completely am fine with and respect. But if you instead say people during the Viking Age had trees in their backyard representing life, well, you better have some sources to back that up. And if you go even further and say in Scandinavia they still plant trees in the backyard that represents life, you are talking out of your ass. No, we're not. So you need to be able to check things with a person from that culture before spreading things online, so you don't get things backwards. Sometimes religion and folklore is both faith and history. And that's when you have to try and separate these two as much as you can and be very clear of what you're actually talking about. So am I saying that only people with an academic title has the right to talk about stuff? No, I am not. There are hobby historians and folklore enthusiasts, costuming enthusiasts, so on, that are excellent researchers and that have a vast knowledge about things without having a university title. But they do their homework. They usually show their sources and they check things up. So trying to gather this long rant somehow together. Can I speak about the culture that is not mine? I say, if this is a living culture and people in this culture is still alive and kicking, speak to them. Double check things. If it is a culture that has died out, like the Vikings, sure, you can do your research, but don't go making connection to modern Scandinavia and what we are doing up here still. We have been Christians for thousands of years, and that is a long time. And if you are talking about the culture of an oppressed people, please, please, please be even more careful and double check and triple check with people from that culture. Is it better to speak about the history of a culture that isn't considered alive, so that it's considered dead? I would say yes, but I have no real answer to this. Because what is a dead culture? Many of the so called dead cultures are still the ancient culture of a modern culture that is still alive and kicking today. Again, the onion. Cultures are not a simple thing. I I do think though that this is an important thing to consider when you are spreading content online. Hence my rant. Spreading information about history and culture is great, but be careful and do your research. Give it a good think. Why do I want to spread this? Do I really have enough knowledge to say this? Do I really have a deeper understanding of this? If the answer is no, then you might not want to publish that before you do some more research. And with that, I am going to step down from my soapbox and end this rant. And yeah, I think that was all. Bye.